Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, texts 1 and 2. Arjuna Yuvaka Praktrim Purusam Kaiva Kestram Kestra Janam Eva Cha Etat Vedatam Ichimi Ganam Ganayam Cha Kesava Sri Bhagavagan Yuvaka Idam Sarvaram Kateya Kestram it abhiyati etad yoveti tam prahu kestra gina iti tad vida. Arjuna said, "O my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the middle, and the field, and the knower of the field, and of knowledge, and the end of knowledge." The blessed Lord said then said, "This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field." Arjuna was inquisitive about Prakriti, or nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, Kestra, the field, Kestra Ajna, its knower, and of knowledge, and the object of knowledge. When he inquired about all these, Krishna said that the body is called the field, and that the one who knows the body is called the knower of the field. This body is the field of activity for the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul is entrapped in material existence, and he attempts to lord over material nature. And so, according to his capacity to dominate material nature, he gets a field of activity. That field of activity is the body. And what is the body? The body is made of senses. The conditioned soul wants to enjoy sense gratification, and according to his capacity to enjoy sense gratification, he is offered a body or field of activity. Therefore, the body is called Kestra, or the field of activity for conditioned soul. Now, the person who does not identify himself with the body is called Kestra Ajna, the knower of the field. It is not very difficult to understand the difference between the field and its knower, and the body and the knower of the body. Any person can consider that from childhood to old age, as he undergoes many changes of body and yet is still one person remaining. Thus, there is a difference between the knower of the field of activities and the actual field of activities. A living conditioned soul can thus understand that he is different from the body. It is described in the beginning, Dehe Saman, that the living entity is within the body, and that the body is changing from childhood to boyhood, and from boyhood to youth, and from youth to old age. And the person who owns the body knows that the body is changing. The owner is distinctly Kestra Ajna. Sometimes we understand that I am happy, I am mad, I am woman, I am a dog, I am a cat. These are the knowers. The knower is different from the field. Although we use many articles, our clothes, etc., we know that we are different from things used. Similarly, we also understand by a little contemplation that we are different from the body. In the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the knower of the body, the living entity, and the position by which he can understand the Supreme Lord are described. In the middle 6 chapters of the Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the relationship between the individual soul and the super soul in regard to devotional service are described. The superior position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the subordinate position of the individual soul are definitely defined in these chapters. The living entities are subordinate under all circumstances, but in their forgetfulness, they are suffering. When enlightened by pious activities, they approach the Supreme Lord in different capacities as the distressed, those in want of money, the inquisitive, and those in search of knowledge. That is also described. Now, starting with the 13th chapter, how the living entity comes in contact with material nature, how he is delivered by the Supreme Lord through the different methods of fruitive activities, cultivation of knowledge, and the discharge of devotional service are explained. Although the living entity is completely different from the material body, he somehow becomes related. This is also explained. Text 3. Kestra Janam Kapi Mam Vidi Sarva Kestrasu Bharata Kestra Snayo Janam Yat Taj Janam Matam Mama. O Skyana Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its owner is called knowledge. That is my opinion. While discussing the subject of this body and the owner of this body, the soul and the supersoul, we shall find 3 different topics of study: the Lord, the living entity, and matter. In every field of activities, in every body, there are 2 souls, the individual soul and the supersoul. Because the supersoul is the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna says, I am also the knower, but I am not the individual owner of the body. I am the super knower. I am present in every body as the Paramatma, or supersoul. One who studies the subject matter of the fields of activity and the knower of the field very minutely, in terms of this Bhagavad Gita, can attain to knowledge. The Lord says, I am the knower of the field of activities in every individual body. The individual may be the knower of his own body, but he is not in the knowledge of other bodies. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is present as the supersoul in all bodies, knows everything about all bodies. He knows about the different bodies of all the various species of life. A citizen may know everything about his patch of land, but the king knows not only his palace, but all the properties possessed by the individual citizens. Similarly, one may be the proprietor of the body individually, but the Supreme Lord is the proprietor of all bodies. The king is the original proprietor of the kingdom, and the citizen is the secondary proprietor. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the supreme proprietor of all bodies. The body consists of the senses. The Supreme Lord is my brain does not want to say this word. Heshikesa, which means controller of the senses. He is the original controller of the senses, just as the king is the original controller of all activities of the state, and the citizens are secondary controllers. The Lord also says, I am also the knower. This means that he is the super knower. The individual soul knows only his particular body. In the Vedic literature, it is stated as follows. Kestrani hi sarani bijam kapi sap hasube tani veti za yoga atma tata kestra ajna yukati. This body is called the Kestra, and within its dwells the owner of the body and the Supreme Lord, who knows both the body and the owner of the body. Therefore, he is called the knower of all fields. The distinction between fields of activities, the owner of activities, and the supreme owner of activities is described as follows. Perfect knowledge of the constitution of the body, the constitution of the individual soul, and the constitution of the supersoul is known in terms of Vedic literature as Jnanam. That is the opinion of Krishna. To understand both the soul and the supersoul as one yet distinct in knowledge, one who does not understand the field of activity and the knower of activity is not perfect in knowledge. One has to understand the position of Prakriti, nature, and Purusha, the enjoyer of nature, and Isvara, the knower who dominates or controls nature and the individual soul. One should not confuse the three and their different capacities. One should not confuse the painter, the painting, and the easel. This material world, which is the field of activities, is nature, and the enjoyer of nature is the living entity. And above them both is the supreme controller, the personality of Godhead. It is stated in Vedic literature, Bhokta Bhogavam Pri Ram Cha Matva Sarvam Proktam Tri Vidham Brahman Etat. There are three Brahman conceptions. Prakriti is Brahman as the field of activities, and the Jiva, individual soul, is also Brahman and is trying to control material nature. And the controller of both of them is also Brahman. He is the factual controller. In this chapter, it will also be explained that out of the two knowers, one is fallible and the other is infallible. One is superior and the other is subordinate. One who understands the two knowers of the field to be one and the same contradicts the supreme personality of Godhead, who states here very clearly that I am the knower of the field of activity. One who understands a rope to be a serpent is not knowledge. There are different kinds of bodies, and there are different owners of the bodies. Because each individual soul has his individual capacity of lording over it, lording it over material nature, there are different bodies. But the Supreme also is present in them as the controller. The word Cha is significant, for it indicates the total number of bodies. That is the opinion of Srila Baladeva Vidibhusana. Krishna is the supersoul present in each and every body apart from the individual soul. And Krishna explicitly says here, and that the supersoul is the controller of both the field of activities and the finite enjoyer. I want to pause here. I know this is like new stuff. Am I keep reading? Are you guys good? Do we need to pause? I know.
We could pause for clarification.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like just pause and try to sort it out and then either keep reading or start again on Monday.
So why don't we do exactly?
I don't want to keep reading if it's just like, I mean, I know sometimes when we keep reading it, like it sorts itself out, but I know when I was learning about Purusha and Prakriti in teacher training, I was like, what? And I kind of just went with it until my brain sorted it out, which I don't even know if it has yet.
Well, yeah. I got it to me, you know, the first couple of slokas to me sounded like proof that there is a soul, you know, and that there is a soul that is separate from the body. So all of you out there who think that soul and consciousness is a construct of the body, you're wrong. You know, I mean, that's how I read this first couple of things. Because the last line of, I guess it would be the purport for the first two slokas is, although the living entity is completely different from the material body, he somehow becomes related. And then it says they're going to explain that. So that to me sort of says, that to me says the soul and the body are separate, and we're going to go through and we're going to explain that. At least that's how I understood that.
Yeah, and I believe that. I mean, maybe not everyone does. So like that part is easier for me to understand because I already believe that. And then I can believe that there's a super soul. Like, I think we've spoken about this before, because I remember thinking like the super soul was like the big battery that's keeping me going, like in my heart. I was thinking that they were doing a good job explaining the difference between. I thought they used like good analogies or examples with Prakriti and Purusha, like with the painting example. And
So how do you see the painting example? He talks about the painter, he talks about the easel, and he talks about, where is that painting
it's
example?
on number 3.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the,
I think the painter is consciousness. The painting is the body. No,
well, what's the easel?
maybe the material universe. I've been like really into this week. It's funny, this reading's coming up. I've been sort of like looking at, there's a lot of people online who talk about the CIA documents that came out a while back about the nature of the universe. And they talk about how we think of matter as this like concrete thing, but it's just an energy field. You know, everything that we see, the body's just an energy field. The chair you're sitting on is just an energy field. Right? But we think it's concrete. It's not. It's always in flux. And the only permanent thing, the only unchanging thing is this consciousness. It's like the only real thing. And it bleeds into multiple realities, like all these alternate realities. So we're like constantly existing in a million places at once, but we don't realize because we get so attached to these energy fields thinking that they're not those things. So Purusha is consciousness and Prakriti is this energy field that we're existing in. That's matter. That's where the Purusha can arrange things, can manifest things, can destroy things, right? It's like the painter. And it's always creating and it's always destroying. But it cannot be created or destroyed itself. I don't know if that brings clarity. When you get into the deeper meditative practices, all this becomes very clear. You start to see these energy fields for what they are. And it's a little freaky and a little scary. I always get my trainees calling me, texting me like months after training's over, years after training's over. This thing happened when I was meditating. I felt like my whole body was melting.
That's crazy. What did you mean when you said we live in many realities?
Yeah, that's been like the current thing I've been exploring. Someone showed it as like, if you drew on a piece of paper, on a pad, a legal pad, with a marker, like a body, and then you press that marker into the head, and the marker bleeds through to the other pages. The other pages are these other realities. Like the soul wants to exist in all forms, in all shapes. It wants to exist and experience every variation that's possible. So we have this is what the CIA documents are saying. So we're actually existing in like millions of alternate realities at all times. But we're only like consciously aware of one at a time. So there's like all these teenagers online and they claim that they can shift realities. And it's funny because the meditation practice that they do is they say to themselves, I am, I am.
Mhm.
This is the rabbit hole I've been in this week. So it's just cracking me up because that's what we do in yoga, right? We go soham. Soham means I am, I am. So they use that and they yoke to their consciousness, which is what yoga means. And then they shift into other experiences. And they say that every experience, any like world that you could ever imagine is happening simultaneously. And they even claim that, and I wonder about this, like when an author is writing a book and they say they tap into that other place, you know, where things are just flowing from them. I wonder if they're just writing down other forms of reality that their consciousness is experiencing, but they're not directly aware of it. That's what I've been thinking about this week.
Is this the analysis and assessment of gateway processes? Is that the document?
I don't know the title of it, but they talk about how time isn't real, right? It's not linear in the way we think it is. There's like graphs of these spirals. Are you looking at it?
Well, I pulled up this document. This is where I'm not sure this is it. It was the document itself is this particular thing is dated 1983.
Yeah, they were secret for
First,
a
there's a
while.
picture of the brain, a really lousy picture of the brain. Oh, consciousness energy grid. Let's see, what else do we have? And then there's something that looks like a sine wave, the absolute in infinity.
Yes. Yeah, so
this
they
is it.
talk
This
about
has to
like
be
if
it.
you
This
read
looks like
through
it.
it, it's literally exactly what we're taught in yoga in the really esoteric stuff. So, and they arrived at this through mathematics, quantum
Yeah,
physics, and
so
all
far
that.
I'm not seeing any formulas, so I'm not sure. This looks interesting though. It looks like it's worth looking at.
Yeah.
Although, you know, the CIA, good Lord, there were
Well,
really crazy people in the CIA.
well,
Insane.
what they say about the brain is like, in order to experience these other realities, you have to relax the left side.
There's
There's
no math in here at all. None.
no, they
None.
don't show you the math.
But it's not, from what even if you look at the references, nothing. There's no real math.
If you want to know the mathematics, you can research Vedic mathematics about the universe, and they'll show you all the equations and everything.
No, I'm talking about what came up with CIA and why, it's, well, okay. I'm definitely gonna look at this, although I don't know how much of this I can handle, because this is, for one thing, some of this stuff, just some of the drawings of the brain and some of the assumptions they're making about the brain really is like 2 generations old. But
It's old, the documents. But what's
yeah,
interesting is what they say about consciousness.
right. Yeah.
And they're explaining these techniques that there are like all these teenagers on the internet that are claiming that they've been using them and like shifting into alternate realities. So this is just, I'm not saying anything is real. I'm
Yeah.
just saying this is what I've been interested in this week.
Oh yeah, well, I can see this is definitely rabbit hole stuff. I can so get that. I had a young guy, he's probably 23 or 24 max, sitting at my table yesterday, who told me that there was evidence that 9 the baseball team Yankees players who had been vaccinated had come down with serious critical COVID symptoms. So I looked it up, and it was just such a distortion of what was really true. There were 9 people from the Yankees conglomerate. So there were a few players and the rest were like staff who, and, season has started. So they were in Florida and they had the Johnson & Johnson one-shot vaccine.
Mhm.
And of course, they're living in very close proximity because it was training camp, et cetera, et cetera. So 9 people who had had the one-shot vaccine did test positive for COVID. None of 5 of them were asymptomatic, and they only knew that they were testing positive for COVID because they test all the time in that kind of situation. And the 4 who were symptomatic had very mild symptoms. And, it's sort of like the stuff, like you said, Amanda, you're not saying it's true. The gross exaggerations and that's just an example of how bizarre this stuff is. And I think the CIA was a precursor for the gross exaggerations of the internet, except they didn't have the technology, for which we should all be grateful.
I mean, I personally know someone who was vaccinated and ended up in the hospital once they caught COVID for like 2 weeks.
So
They
what
were
type
severely
of
ill.
information did the person have?
I think they had an mRNA vaccine. It wasn't the vector. It wasn't Johnson & Johnson.
So it was either Moderna or
It was Moderna or Pfizer.
So
And then her
the
husband got
upshot
it
of
and
this
died.
article was, one of the things they talked about was that probably many people who have been vaccinated do catch COVID, but we don't know about it because, first of all, testing is greatly reduced now. And secondly,
Yeah, they're not reporting it anymore unless someone dies and gets hospitalized. So we don't know who's catching it, who's been vaccinated.
well, I also think that a lot of people just aren't getting tested. And plus, if the mRNA vaccinations really do lead to, you can still get it, but you won't get as sick kind of thing. If they really do lead to that, then probably a lot of people don't even realize
Yeah.
that they have COVID at any level, And I'm sure there's a number of cases where what's supposed to work hasn't worked and has resulted in, and maybe has resulted in some really nasty stuff, like the person who was hospitalized for 2 weeks, et cetera. But my only point was, what he came in saying was the case, because this is a guy who hasn't been vaccinated yet. I said, do your research, go out and do it takes 5 minutes. We have this fabulous tool where you can pull up almost anything, but don't just go to Twitter, I mean, you have to look it up. So these teens who are doing this, I love teenagers. They get so passionate.
Yeah, that's what's been like kind of interesting to me. And I try to keep an open mind because who knows what's true.
Well, you can kind of figure out what's more likely to be true than not if you dig down somewhat.
Well, I've
I was
personally had very like extreme experiences in meditation
Yeah.
where I didn't think that could be true when I first read about it, but it became true. So I think that kind of opened my mind up to the possibility that there could be alternate realities. I mean, didn't CERN say that there was like an alternate universe traveling along beside ours and
what
the time
physicists
moving in the
and
opposite
research-
direction or something, the potentiality of that?
No, yeah, it's potential. There's a potential for multiple universes.
Yeah.
That's one theory of the way things work, That's it, and it's really interesting, and it makes for some great discussions. But I don't think there's any real evidence for that. But that doesn't mean that there's not evidence leading to that kind of conclusion, which makes it worthy of further research and exploration. But that's not a fact yet.
What's interesting to me though is like the word truth in itself. Like for those teenagers, they are having a true experience. It might not even be like a real, like, but they may have so many layers of illusion on top of them. So like we report on things that people are experiencing without like delving into the deeper layers of something. So like if a teenager reads something on the internet and wants to try it out and has this out of body experience, it's true to them, even though it may not even be real. It's just like when I have a dream and it feels true to me, it's not real. And so you really have to like separate out the two. And that's where like the science doesn't, like with data, like that part is missing in the statistics, like that human part of it.
But Bhagavad Gita says that this is a dream too, and we think it's just as real as the dream when we fall asleep.
Like time and dreams, I have like, I was texting with Amanda yesterday about I'm very good at math, and algebra I was very good at. I can add and subtract. I cannot do years. I cannot do time. Time confuses the crap out of me. Time differences going forward and backward, which I have to do all day long on my phone. I cannot calculate in my head. So like to me, it makes sense that time isn't real because my brain can't even understand it. And like dreaming, I have real intense dreams, and I've been having, the last 2 nights have been extremely hard for me to go to bed, and I'm sleeping, but just the matter of the bedtime of like getting into bed. And last night I broke down because I didn't want to go to bed because I was afraid Kramer was going to come to me in my dream, and I want him to come to me, but my dreams are so real sometimes. I don't know if I'm exactly ready, but I also don't want to push him away. So dream, like, yeah, it's real, it's crazy, but it also can be a little scary too when you have a dream that's so real and it takes you a minute to wake up in the morning and no one else believes you and you're like, I'm not crazy, but you are crazy. I am crazy.
Well, every mind is deluded, is what the Gita teaches too. That's what the mind does. It dilutes us. It's like,
Well, I haven't dreamed the last few nights. Eric says I'm just mentally exhausted, but I usually have like really detailed dreams. So I don't know what's going on. It's on break.
yeah, maybe your brain
I'm
just
fine
needs to
with.
shut down for a minute.
I can't, yeah, I don't know if I could do all day and all night. So I'm okay, and luckily I've been sleeping. But usually sleep is never my problem. But yeah, dreaming and sleep is, I mean, dreaming and time is definitely 2 crazy things. And I honestly, like, if the teenage, I was watching, we're slowly going through all the superhero movies again, and I watched Iron Man 3 last night with Eric. And it's just the guy that plays Iron Man is so, I can't think of what his name is, but he is just Robert Downey Jr. He is so funny in that role, and he's like, his ego in it, and then the other power guy's ego, and like they talk about like, you know, like having the power and then the ego taking over, and the ego being the like ego being like the demon, the one that is destroying us. So like if the teenagers are doing something and they're just doing it, but it's when the ego, when that power starts coming in and they start like, you know, telling their friends, oh, you know, and then like leading them wrongly into things, like sort of like what Sue's gentleman at the table, you know, start spreading rumors and false information just because their ego is taking over and they're like know-it-all. Oh, teenagers and their know-it-all statuses.
Yeah, in defense of this guy who is not really egotistical, he was basically trying to share information, and I said that doesn't sound right. You know, if 9 members of the Yankee team had serious COVID, don't you think that would be on the front page of every major New York paper at least? I mean, in Boston it would get buried, but here it would be on the front page. So my only point was that, but it's interesting. I mean, I agree that people can experience things and people can feel things, me too, that are incredibly powerful. but then cannot be demonstrated in any other way. But 300 years ago, 350 years ago, people really, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. Not that long ago, people really believed that the earth was flat. Why? Because our perception teaches us that the earth is flat. That's what it looks like. Unless you happen to be up in the space station, the earth is flat. It really looks that way. But people have known from scientific deduction since about the year 300 BC that it's not flat. That
Oh,
the
they
earth,
knew this back in Vedic times, Sue.
pardon me?
They knew this back in Vedic times. It was round.
Okay, so how
So
many
like
years?
thousands and
5,000
thousands
years?
of years ago. It's really like I actually read something online yesterday. People were like trying to use the Bible to prove that the earth was flat. I wonder if that's where that whole crazy theory comes from.
No, I think it's a part of your perception. You look at the earth looks flat. I mean, I look at the earth now and all I see are houses and buildings because I live on Long Island. But if I go and visit one of my two siblings who live in the country, you look out and you watch the sunrise and you watch the sunset, and honest to God, it looks like the earth is flat. And you become a serious flatlander from it doesn't even need any propaganda. And so science combats that by saying, yeah, it looks that way. That's your experience. It's pretty powerful experience. But just because you think it doesn't make it true.
Well,
Says
that's what I was saying.
Radiohead, and they were right.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying with the teenagers, but it doesn't take away the truth from that person's experience. Like, it's still true to that person until they learn otherwise. So it's still true to the person that's believing it. And this is where
But
truth.
that can be a powerfully dangerous thing. I mean,
yes.
it doesn't matter so much if 50% of the world still thinks that the world is flat. I mean, I'm not sure how it's going to hurt things. It does matter when 40% of America still believes that the election was stolen based on lies and mistruths and a kind of a faith in somebody who was deluded himself, truly deluded. That does matter. That does change things. So
I'm not saying that. That's what I'm saying, though. Like, we can't not hear that that's their truth. That's what those people truly believe, and we have to honor that. But we have to figure out why and untangle them from their truth. Get that Maya, get that illusion, get that perception out. But we can't just go point our finger in the face and tell them they're wrong, because that's not fair.
Not only that, it doesn't work.
No,
it doesn't work. What's the point? You're wasting
that's not
energy.
the way to do things. So and it's the same with the teenagers. We can't just go point our finger in the face and say, this isn't the experience you're having. We have to sit down with people and really start digging deep. And that's where people like your husband start really becoming powerful, like these very expert people that can sit down and really untangle people's thoughts. And we have to let people figure out their own truth. So we have to let these people, we have to be the light, the people that are like the true knowers, and just keep reflecting ourselves onto them so that they can start seeing more clearly, because they're distorted. Like you're saying, they're being led by very egotistical, distorted people that are spreading their truth, but are actually not truth. So
I mean, listen, I hear what you're saying, Sue, but I mean, you're saying it takes 5 minutes to study this stuff. It's actually getting like intentionally buried, like Facebook, Google. They all made public announcements that even if information is being shared that's true about adverse reactions to these things, that they are going to delete it because they don't want anything to deter people from getting vaccinated, which I understand.
I think
the point of that, but
yesterday, I think, right?
Yeah, it's anti-scientific, so like I actually have been spending like an inordinate amount of time reading actual studies, not what the media is revealing, and there can be adverse reactions. And I know that creates sort of a what's the word, like a this is people who've gotten it don't want to hear that because it's scary. They want to feel like what they were told, that they were making the right choice for humanity by doing this, was the right thing. And I get that, but at a certain level, studies aren't conclusive that when you're asymptomatic and you catch this while you're vaccinated, that you won't give it to other people.
Mhm.
So now the CDC isn't keeping a record of it anymore. It's, and at the same week that they told vaccinated people that they don't have to wear a mask anymore.
That's
And
what
if you look at their reasoning, you could read right into it. They don't have a ton of scientific proof to back up that that's the safest choice. And a lot of scientists are coming out against this ruling because it's just,
What,
we
you
don't
mean
know
the-
enough
the-
yet,
the-
you know, to say that
the
it's
safest
conclusively
choice,
safe is like
What do you
ridiculous.
mean
There
by
are
the
no long-term
safest choice? The
studies.
wearing of masks or not wearing of masks? What, I
No, so
don't
the
know what you were
CDC came
referring
out and
to.
said that if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear masks. And part of their reasoning is that they want people who are vaccinated to feel like they have more privileges so that more unvaccinated people would become vaccinated.
Yeah, I know,
all
I
about
know.
politics and money.
Right. That's not science to me. And that bothers me. And it bothers me that like they're literally deleting people's personal experiences. They're saying everything on VAERS that's being reported is fake. That's like not science to me. So it's like we're on two sides of two extremes. The extreme of like conspiracy theories that like COVID isn't real, that they're trying to like depopulate the earth with this vaccine. Like there's like some crazy conspiracy theories. But on the other end of it, like I feel like there's another extreme that like this medical product can't cause any harm, that it's safe and it's effective, when the clinical studies didn't prove efficacy. They just proved that it'll lessen your symptoms. That's it, which is great. That's great for people who get it,
Well,
to
Amanda,
lessen the
first of all,
symptoms.
that
But like
is
the thought that we're
efficacy.
getting it to protect other people may not be true. You
Well,
might be able to still
Amanda,
infect someone with COVID.
Amanda, I agree with you that the information is being manipulated. And I think one of the reasons that it's happening is because, as you say, they want people to become vaccinated. They want more people to
Yeah,
become
which I get.
vaccinated.
Like it's a big
And it is
problem what happened
too-
with Trump. He didn't manage this right, and now we're in a freaking mess. So this is like the only solution that they can find, but it doesn't mean it's a perfect solution. And like this is leading to people like that guy talking about the baseball team who are like they feel like they can't trust because like what Pam's saying, like if we don't have open dialogue, if we don't allow different, you know, ideas, then it shuts people down and it like sends them into a conspiracy theory loop. I think that's what's going on in America right now.
Well,
Like
one
there's
of the
no
problems,
dialogue anymore.
Amanda, I think one of the problems is that the whole, from the medical and scientific perspective, it's very complicated, and there are huge chunks of uncertainty, so that the things that are certain and would be worthwhile, because it has been demonstrated that if you get the mRNA vaccines, if you get sick, you're likely to be less sick than if
Less,
you
which is
didn't
good.
get it.
Yeah.
That in and of itself is incredibly worthy, because A, it means it might not die, you know, from that at least. Plane crash, yes, but maybe not from COVID. And B, I'd rather be less sick than more sick. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I get the flu vaccine.
Yeah, I hear you.
Because so that which seems to be fairly well based in research, and then these other levels of uncertainties, it takes time to sift through all of that and to present it. And there's very few people, I think, who can present this stuff clearly. And so they shift to this other stuff where, as you say, where they bury certain kinds of information because it's not palatable, and they shouldn't be doing that. Or
No,
they
they
do
shouldn't
things
be.
like
This
hold
whole conversation is going to get
lotteries for
deleted on
$1 million
YouTube because we're
if you get
talking about this.
vaccinated.
Oh, I should have paused it.
No, it's okay. It doesn't matter. It's just like, that's like, it's exactly what you're saying, Sue. Like, that's the problem. Like that they're,
Stop it.
and then, you know, another thing is Pfizer